Every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:45 in the morning. Dottie Crane pushed through the glass door of Harlow's Diner on the corner of Elm and Fifth, and she always took the same stool at the far end of the counter. The one closest to the wall farthest from the door. The staff knew her order before she sat down. Black coffee, 2 sugars, and a short stack of pancakes she would eat maybe half of before wrapping the rest in a paper napkin and slipping it into her bag. Not because she wasn't hungry. Anyone who looked closely enough would know she was. She just had a habit of saving things, food, words, herself, for later. She had been coming to Harlow's for almost 8 months. Long enough that Gus, the morning cook, knew to start her coffee the moment he heard the bell above the door. Long enough that the younger waitress, a college girl named Bree, had stopped asking if she needed anything else. Dottie always said no. Dottie always meant it. What nobody at Harlow's knew was that before she came in each Tuesday and Thursday morning, Dottie had already been awake for 3 hours. She woke at 3:45 without an alarm, the way people do when sleep becomes a thing the body no longer trusts. She would lie still in the dark, listening to the small sounds of the apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the upstairs neighbor's floor, the breathing of her 7-year-old son through the thin wall between their rooms, and then, slowly, she would get up. She would make lunches, pack a bag, lay out clothes, do the quiet, invisible work of keeping 2 lives running on the kind of budget that required a calculator and a prayer every single week. Her son's name was Jasper. He had her same dark eyes and his father's stubborn chin, and he asked too many questions for a child his age, which Dottie had long decided was either a gift or a warning, possibly both. He was in 2nd grade. He liked dinosaurs and strawberry milk and a particular brand of fruit snacks that cost 40 cents more per box than the store brand. And Dottie bought them anyway, every time, because there were so few things she could give him without it costing something else. Jasper's father had been gone for 2 years. Not dead, just gone, the kind of gone that doesn't leave a forwarding address and stops answering calls after the 3rd month. Dottie had filed the paperwork herself, stayed up past midnight reading legal aid websites on her phone, and signed her name on the divorce documents with the same steady hand she used for everything that hurt. She didn't talk about any of this at Harlow's. She didn't talk about much of anything. She came, she sat, she ate half her pancakes, she left. That was the arrangement. The morning everything shifted started like every other one. Dottie came in at 6:45, took her stool, and wrapped both hands around the mug Bree slid toward her before she even had her jacket off. Outside it was the kind of October that meant business. Sharp and gray, the kind of cold that gets into the spaces between your fingers. She had been up since 3:30 that morning. Jasper had woken with a bad dream, and she had sat on the edge of his bed in the dark for 20 minutes, one hand on his back, until his breathing smoothed out again. Then she had gone to the kitchen, and sat at the table and looked at the envelope from the utility company that she had been not opening for 4 days, and she had finally opened it. And the number inside was worse than she had prepared herself for. She was thinking about that number when the family came in. She noticed them the way she noticed most things, peripherally, without turning her head. A man somewhere around 40, with the look of someone who hadn't slept much either. And 2 boys, maybe 8 or 9 years old, identical in the way that made you look twice, just to confirm what you were seeing. Twins. They slid into the booth 2 spots down from her stool. The boys immediately in disagreement about who would sit where, and the man said something low and firm that settled it within seconds. He was clearly practiced at this. Dottie looked back at her coffee. She heard the boys order, one wanted waffles, the other wanted the same thing but with extra syrup, a distinction he made very seriously. The man ordered eggs and toast and asked for a second orange juice without looking at the menu, which meant he had been here before. Or he was the kind of person who knew what he wanted and didn't waste time about it. She finished her coffee. Bree refilled it. Dottie started on her pancakes. At the booth, the boys ate fast the way children do when they're excited about something, which apparently they were. Though Dottie couldn't track the full conversation from where she sat. She caught fragments. Something about a field trip. Something about a permission slip. The man was half listening, checking his phone, then putting it face down on the table, with the deliberate look of someone, reminding himself to be present. Dottie understood that look. She had made it in mirrors. She had eaten about half her pancakes, when she heard one of the boys go quiet. The other one said something she didn't catch. The man made a sound that might have been agreement. And then there was a pause, the kind that has weight to it. And Dottie felt, without quite knowing why, that something had changed in the booth 2 spots down. She didn't look, she never looked, but she heard the man say quietly, "Maybe she's just having a hard time." And one of the boys said, She looks like how I felt when Grandma left. Dottie kept her eyes on her plate. She didn't know she was crying until the tear hit the back of her hand. It was one. Just one. And she caught it quickly, pressed it away with the heel of her palm like she was wiping away something careless. She breathed in slow through her nose. The diner noise continued around her. Gus clanged something in the kitchen. The bell above the door rang for someone new. She was fine. She had been fine for 2 years, which was different from being okay. But she had learned not to confuse the two. She folded the paper napkin next to her plate into a smaller square. Then a smaller one. Something to do with her hands. The boys in the booth were whispering now. A conspiratorial, serious kind of whispering, the kind that children do when they have decided something is important. She heard the man say, "Guys," in the tone of a warning, and one of them said, "Dad, it's fine, it's just nice," and there was a pause and then the sound of a booth bench shifting as someone stood up. Dottie heard the small footsteps before she saw him. She turned her head just slightly, and there was one of the boys. The one in the blue sweatshirt, she couldn't have said which. Standing at the edge of her stool space, with the careful posture of someone who had rehearsed this and was now hoping the rehearsal was enough. He had a folded piece of paper in his hand. She recognized it as a page torn from a small spiral notebook, the kind with the wire coil at the top. His brother's, or his own. "Hi," he said. His voice was steady for a kid doing something brave. Dottie turned to face him fully. "Hi," she said. He held out the paper. "We made this for you." Then, like he wasn't sure that was enough context, "Me and Liam," she took it. He nodded once, the way adults nod when they've completed a task, and walked back to the booth. Dottie looked down at the folded paper in her hand. She didn't open it right away. She set it on the counter next to her mug and looked at it for a moment, the way you look at something when you're not sure if you're ready for what it contains. Then she unfolded it. The handwriting was the uneven, effortful print of a child who is still learning how much pressure to put on a pencil. Letters of different sizes, leaning at different angles, but legible. Completely legible. It said, "You seem really sad. We hope your day gets better. You deserve good things." Below it, in slightly different handwriting, the other bit said, "P.S. Pancakes help, we think." Dottie read it twice. Then a third time. She had not been told she deserved good things in longer than she could track. Not by anyone who meant it the way these two boys meant it. Without agenda. Without expectation. Without even knowing her name. Just two kids in a diner booth who had looked over and decided that a stranger's quiet was something worth answering. Something in her chest came loose. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just loosened. The way a knot does when you finally stop pulling against it and let it breathe. She pressed her lips together. Looked up at the water-stained ceiling tiles for a moment. Then back down. The boys were watching her from the booth. When she looked over, they both immediately looked at their plates, with the unconvincing casualness of children who were absolutely still watching. Their father met her eyes. He shook his head slightly. Apologetic, the kind of apology that's also a little helpless. "They have a lot of feelings," he said, "and opinions about what to do with them." Dottie surprised herself. She laughed. Not a big laugh, a small one, shorter than a breath but real. The kind that arrives before you've decided to let it. "I can see that," she said. She slid off her stool, the paper still in her hand, and walked the few steps to their booth. She wasn't sure why, she hadn't planned to, but her feet made the decision before her mind caught up. The way the right things sometimes do. "Thank you," she said to the boys. "This was very kind." The one in the blue sweatshirt, she had decided he was the one who delivered the note, looked up at her with the careful assessment of a child taking his job seriously. "Did it help?" he asked. Dottie considered the question. The way it was asked, direct and earnest and completely without performance, it deserved a real answer. "Yeah," she said, "it did." The other one, Liam, leaned forward. "Are you okay?" "Liam." The father started. "It's all right," Dottie said. She looked at Liam. He was watching her the way kids watch things when they're not filtering yet, when they're just seeing. No pretense, no social calculation. Just a genuine question about whether a stranger was okay. She had forgotten what it felt like to be seen like that. "I'm working on it," she said, which was true. Truer than fine had ever been the man. She had been rude to not ask his name, extended his hand across the table. "I'm Derek," he said. "Derek Pullman. And these are the 2 reasons I haven't had a quiet meal in 9 years. Cam." He nodded at the one in the blue sweatshirt. "And Liam?" "Dottie Crane," she said, and shook his hand. She hadn't introduced herself to anyone new in months. It felt strange in the way that things feel strange when they used to be ordinary. "Dottie," Cam said thoughtfully, like he was filing it away somewhere. "That's a good name." "Thank you," she said. "I'll pass that along to my mother." Derek made a sound that was almost a laugh. The boys grinned. She didn't leave when she should have. She stood there for another minute, then two, and then Derek gestured at the empty space on the bench beside Liam and said, "You're welcome to sit if you want, we're not in any rush." He paused. "Well, they're not in any rush. I'm supposed to get them to school by 8. So, we have time," Cam said firmly. Dottie stood there with the folded note in her hand and the remains of her pancakes cooling at the counter. And she made a decision that was less of a decision and more of an exhale. She sat down. The boys immediately treated this as both natural and correct. Liam slid over to make room without being asked. Cam took a large bite of his waffle and spoke around it with the cheerful disregard for manners that is a particular gift of children who feel comfortable. He told her about a kid in his class who had brought a lizard to school in his lunchbox. She asked what happened. The lizard escaped. The class lost 40 minutes of math looking for it. The teacher found it in the reading corner. It was, Cam confirmed, the best day of school so far this year. Dottie laughed again. Twice in 10 minutes. She was out of practice. It felt like using a muscle she had almost forgotten she had. Liam was quieter than his brother, that direct, uncomplicated attention. Then he said not unkindly, "Do you have kids?" "I do," she said. "One, a boy, Jasper." "He's sad. Is he sad too?" Liam asked. "Liam?" Derek said it gently but clearly. "He's okay," Dottie said. And she meant that one. Jasper somehow was okay. He asked too many questions and missed his father in a way he probably didn't have full words for yet, but he was okay. He was resilient in a way that sometimes broke her heart with its efficiency. Children moved through things. She was the one who stood still. "Good," Liam said, and went back to his orange juice. Derek was looking at her with the expression of a man who was sorry and didn't know how to say it without overstepping. She recognized it as the expression people got when they suspected your situation was harder than you were letting on, and had enough decency not to push. "The note was their idea," he said. "I want to be honest about that. I was going to stay out of it. Sometimes with them, staying out of it is the right move." "It was the right move," Dottie said. "Yeah?" She looked down at the paper still in her hand. "You deserve good things. I can't remember the last time a stranger said something kind to me," she said. "Genuinely kind, not polite. Not," she paused. "Not the automatic stuff, this was real." She looked at the boys. "You two were paying attention. We always pay attention." Cam said this with the complete confidence of someone stating a fact. Dottie believed him. Bree appeared at the booth to refill coffees, looked between Dottie and Derek with an expression she did a decent job of not making obvious, and topped up both mugs without comment. Dottie smiled at her. Bree blinked. She had never seen Dottie smile at Harlow's before, she realized, and smiled back. The four of them sat together for 20 more minutes. The boys talked mostly. Derek asked Dottie a few quiet questions, where she worked, how long she'd been in town, with the practiced ease of someone who knew how to have a conversation, without making it feel like an interview. She answered more than she expected to. She said she worked dispatch at a logistics company. Overnight shifts on Mondays and Wednesdays, which was why she was so tired on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said she had been in Franklin Park for 3 years. She said Jasper was doing well in school despite everything. Despite everything, Derek said, not a question, just acknowledging that everything was a word with weight. "It's been a complicated couple of years," Dottie said, the understatement of her adult life. Derek nodded. He didn't push. He didn't offer advice. He didn't say at least anything, which was rarer than it should have been. At 10 to 8, he looked at his watch and made the announcement that got both boys immediately into their jackets with the efficiency of a drill they had run many times. They knew the stakes of being late. They had opinions about tardiness. Cam had explained, during a brief tangent, that his teacher gave out these small gold tokens for punctuality and he was currently 3 away from a prize and was not, under any circumstances, going to jeopardize this. Dottie laughed for the 4th time. She walked with them toward the door, because she realized her jacket was already on, and she had stayed longer than she meant to, and she had to get to the grocery store before her afternoon shift anyway. At the door, Liam stopped and turned to face her, with the gravity of a child concluding important business. "You're going to be okay," he said. He said it the same way he might have said it's going to rain or the bus comes at noon. Just a fact he was reporting, not a wish, not a platitude. A thing he had decided was true and was therefore telling her. Dottie looked at him for a moment. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think I am." Cam, already half out the door, turned back. "You should come back on Thursday," he said. "We come every Tuesday and Thursday." "I know," Dottie said, "so do I." He pointed at her like this confirmed something he had suspected. Good. And then they were gone. Out into the gray October morning, Derek herding them toward a parking spot on the street, while Cam argued that he should be allowed to carry the car keys because he was responsible. and Liam said that last week Cam had locked the keys inside the car, which was apparently a whole incident, and their father's voice faded into the general noise of the street. Dottie stood at the glass door for a moment after it swung shut, then she pushed it open and walked out into the cold. She did the grocery run. She picked Jasper up from school that afternoon. She made dinner, the chicken and rice thing he liked. And they sat at the kitchen table together and he told her, at considerable length and with visual demonstrations, about what would happen if a Spinosaurus fought a T-Rex. And she listened, really listened, in the way she sometimes struggled to, when the weight of everything else was sitting on her shoulders. That night, after Jasper was asleep, she sat at the kitchen table again. The utility envelope was still there. The number was still what it was. Nothing had changed about the practical architecture of her life, but she opened her bag and took out the folded notebook paper and smoothed it flat on the table in front of her. You deserve good things. She had been moving through the last 2 years on the assumption that deserving things was a luxury. That right now, what mattered was functioning, getting Jasper fed, getting the bills paid, getting through the week. There was no room in a budget that tight for anything as impractical as what she deserved. But here it was, in a child's careful handwriting, offered without conditions. She left it on the table, went to bed, slept for 6 hours straight, which was more than she'd managed in weeks. Thursday morning, 6:45. The bell above the door at Harlow's rang, and Dottie came in from the cold. She stopped just inside the entrance. The booth 2 spots down from her usual stool was empty. She was earlier than usual. She'd woken at 4 but felt, for the first time in a long time, the particular restlessness of someone who wanted to be somewhere, rather than someone who had run out of places to be still. She stood in the entrance for a moment. Then she didn't go to her stool. She went to the booth instead, the one 2 spots down, and she sat on the bench facing the door, so she would see them when they came in. Bree appeared with a coffee mug and set it down without comment, then looked at her for a second and Dottie could see her filing something away, updating whatever mental picture she had of the quiet woman at the counter. At 6:58, the bell above the door rang again. Derek came in first, then Cam, then Liam. Liam paused inside the door to fix something on his backpack, and Cam kept walking without him, which caused Liam to say his brother's name in an outraged whisper, and Cam said he was already walking to the table, which he was in fact doing at that precise moment. He stopped when he saw Dottie. His face did the thing children's faces do when something expected has arrived ahead of schedule and proven itself true. He pointed at her. Same gesture as Tuesday. You're here. I told you I would be, Dottie said. Liam appeared at his shoulder, backpack finally sorted. He looked at her in the booth. He looked at his brother. He looked back at her. He slid in across from her without saying anything, like this was obvious. Cam slid in beside him. Derek pulled up a chair from the neighboring table, turned it backwards, and sat with the calm efficiency of someone who had long since stopped being surprised by where his children led him. Tuesday and Thursday, he said, with something that was either a question or a reminder. Tuesday and Thursday, Dottie said. Gus started her pancakes without being asked. She ate the whole stack.